Hi there, my name is John Stevens, pastor of Zion Lutheran Church in Oregon City, Oregon, and we're part of the ELCA, and welcome to Dollar Store Children's Sermons. As we look at the lectionary text and we tie to an item from the Dollar Tree, this is for the 11th Sunday after Pentecost, and we're looking at the gospel lesson or the possibility of the second lesson. So I just got done with a funeral, and it's really warm outside, and there we are, but I wanted to get this up. And for the 20th of August. This is for the Revised Common Lectionary, so we're looking at the Gospel and the Romans text, which is chapter 11. And so the item I'm looking at using is either a bell or a whistle. Sometimes at the Dollar Tree they have, or the dollar store, they've got the teacher's bell, ding, 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 or they also have whistles. And so looking at that, the other item that, and this would be tying to the tied to the second lesson, would be some type of, in the party favor section, getting some gifts, little toys or little gifts or bubbles or something that you can give to the kids that's going to be theirs and that cannot be taken away. It is theirs. And so the first is really looking at this idea that having a disagreement with someone in love, having a disagreement with someone doesn't mean that you don't love each other. It doesn't mean that things are bad. It doesn't mean that things are wrong. That sometimes we have a difference of opinion, and it is okay to express that difference of opinions. It's okay that when we're in relationship, when we're in family, when we're in close proximity, and of course not using that word with the kids, but when we are close to one another, we're going to fight. Brothers and sisters fight, friends fight. It just happens, and that's it. We're human, and we're gonna disagree with one another. In the gospel lesson, I love the exchange about the woman talking to Jesus, and people say we can't read tone. We don't know if Jesus is saying, we don't know if Jesus is kind of saying it slyly or jokingly. But I think anytime it lets Jesus off the hook. I love the fact that the woman just calls Jesus, it's calling a spade, saying, look, Jesus, even you're saying this to me, but even we need to eat too. Even the promise is meant for us as well. But there seems to be a disagreement, but it's okay. That our God, I always tell my kids that God is big enough to take our yells. I love the story of Job and where we rail against God and or we cry why, but God is big enough for that. So looking at the bell, because the bell's like a good thing, like in the right corner or whatever, but we don't. That's maybe getting a little bit more violent than I want to get, but the idea that that there are disagreements that happen, and that even then, when we come together and we can forgive one another, and there can be, but I think sometimes we sidestep the fact that sometimes, or a lot of times, when we disagree with one another, when we stay there and we actually talk with each other, afterwards we end up being closer. Brothers and sisters, when we fight, afterwards, there's a sense of we still love one another. So that's the direction I'm going. The other thing is that in Romans I have the sense that the gifts of God cannot be taken away. Paul says, talking about since we are heirs of the promise. Does this mean that God's promise doesn't reach out to others? Especially Paul's talking about his own background and the Jews and all of that, and the children of God, the Israelites, and all of that, and that Paul says the promise cannot be taken away from them, and this image that God's promise is good and firm and strong. Even when we could pull that into the gospel, even when we're disagreeing with one another, we could say, I want to tell God this, but this might be the thing that causes God not to love me. And God says, you know what? I love you no matter what. And so this is springboard thinking for my children's sermon. But I'm going with this idea that God's promise is secure, and that having hard conversations with one another that aren't easy, that make us feel like we want to crawl in our skin a little bit, that's important and real stuff. To pretend that that doesn't happen, and to pretend that doesn't happen then in the church, it's not reality. And so to help our kids say, you know what, we're going to disagree with each other, and that's okay. And God still is with us, and God will walk with us and help walk us through that. So anyway, those are some thoughts. Those are some thoughts I have for this the children's sermon on the 20th. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a fantastic week.